Good afternoon. Good rainy Thursday. Not gonna complain because the grass could use the rain, so it's good. So I'm gonna call to order the Nashville MTA Board Meeting. First on our agenda is roll call. Aaron Thompson, second meeting, welcome back. You came back. This is good. It didn't stop you. Well, we're glad to have you back. Jessica Dolphin, Gail Carr-Williams, present, and Janet Miller. Present, all in, and I think Monica will include in our minutes those senior staff members from MTA for our minutes as well. So first, the next thing on our agenda is approval of the August 24th, 2023 MTA Board minutes. If I could have a motion for approval?
So moved, Janet Miller.
Second.
Okay, any discussion, any additions or deletions? Without hearing any, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next on our agenda is public comments, and first I have Mr. John Bull. And just a reminder, as Mr. Bull comes to the podium, that our public comments are 2 minutes, and there is a timer up, so everybody can see the timer, and you don't have to look for my thumbs up or anything anymore. So thank you very much. Welcome, Mr. Bull.
Thank you. It's been a while.
It has.
I reside at 370 Wallace Road. Been a frequent rider since 2019. Route 52 is my in and out route, which I know very well. I intend to ride the bus counting transfers 9 times today, so we use the system. Holding up a $2 bill, wonderful depiction of the Declaration of Independence. It's a one-way fare if you pay by cash. As y'all are very aware, come October, it'll be just for one trip without transfer. Declaration of Independence taking a bit of a hit on that if you want to look at it without any transfers, but that's where we are. Another thing about Thomas Jefferson's contribution is we need dedicated funding. This is no news to any of y'all. The new administration hopefully will address that issue, if not immediately, in the years to come. It's necessary. Reference quick ticket. When I got on the bus this morning at 4:40, 6 people were ahead of me. Every one of them paid $2 for fare. If they do that on a consistent basis come October, that will impact them. They were all apparently not joyriding, but going to work. WeLink is really limited in my area. And one last thing, drivers, they are doing extremely well. I'm very impressed with their professionalism and their flexibility in these times, and I'm over my time, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Bull. Mr. Darius Knight, I have up next.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Knight.
I come to this board meeting today to address something that I've had happen to me 3 times. I have a full concern that this board really needs to be concerned with because it also affects not only customers, but as well as your operators. I know many of you all are aware that during this pandemic, many transit agencies have seen upticks in violence towards bus operators. But what you don't see is that violence shown against the customer. And last year was the first time I had it happen to me. And I didn't think it was going to happen again, but it's happened twice this year. I have been threatened 3 times, once last year and twice this year, only by just saying, you're going the wrong way. It's only happening on one route. And I am very concerned because operations has come out on this particular bus route. They have tried, safety has come out, safety has watched video, and I personally believe that this is an issue that is with your new operators. There's a lot of things going on where I feel that safety needs to take over the training process at this point because of the things that is being seen, not only by customers, but by your own staff at Central. But I wanted to also let you all know that, I wanted to put something in writing so that you don't forget my words. And of course, it's with Margaret for all of you all so that you will be able to see this. But there is one sheet that I only did because I kind of messed it up. But you all can look at the sheet that Margaret has that has pictures on it so that, yes, ma'am. You all can look at that to kind of see the remainder of it. But I'm just going to ask, or I just want to say, thank you for actually slashing the price of your fares so that you can promote your quick ticket. Because that actually, to me, from what I'm noticing is I'm seeing a lot more people than I typically was. So I hope that you all can keep that up. And great job on doing that. And as well as for Saturday as well, for getting to that inauguration. That's a good step forward. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. Good afternoon. I want to first thank you all, and especially the mayor and the council for this last budget improvement and the improved service we're going to be seeing. I think living off the 55, we've been very late and getting later in terms of on-time performance. I know part of that was due to the Broadway Bridge, even though the 55 doesn't run over it. But I think it really highlights how the way our system is designed, everything is so dependent on each other. And as we move into a new mayoral administration that seems to be more open to transit, I think now is the time for you all to really push for how can we get priority in that downtown core? How can we get dedicated bus lanes? Because those effects really ricochet across the network, just even as much as from bus availability, right? When we have buses that aren't getting back to the garage in time. I once got picked up on the 55, which averages 26 passengers per trip in a 12-seat access cutaway, because that's the only vehicle that the operator said was available for him to take at that time. And so those effects really ricochet all across the network. And I think even when we look at things like collision rates, when you're a driver who's 15 minutes behind and you're stressed, just like when you're driving your car, you're probably not going to be driving as safe as when you're on time and have plenty of time to double check everything. So I'd encourage you to really push for that downtown priority. It's really a political lift more than a financial lift right now. And that's where we need that push politically. Thank you.
I do not have any other public comments cards. Is there somebody else that would like to make a public comment? Is there anyone else wishing to make a public comment? Hearing no request for public comments, that closes that segment of our agenda at this time. Thank you all for your comments. Next on our agenda is the information only items. There are 3 items in there. I would ask any of the board members, do any of you have any of those items you'd like to pull out to have discussion about? Hearing no request at this time, please be mindful of those 3 items. And if you do have questions later, please make certain you reach out to one of the MTA staff members that are responsible for those areas. Thank you. Next, the consent agenda item. We have 1 item in the consent agenda. Is there any request by any board member to pull that item out to have discussion? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and there is a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, is there one? Oh, no, you're good. Okay. Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, next is Operations and Finance Committee. Jessica Dalton.
All right, thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I am looking forward to this Operations and Finance Committee session. First up is a report on the MTA Legal Services with Vince Malone on page 19 of the book, M-A-23-029. Take it away, Vince. Thank you.
There we go. Good deal. Good afternoon, MTA Board. Thank you so much. Item on the agenda is MA 23029. This is MTA Legal Services. The agency and the board relies on outside counsel for legal guidance and for board secretary services. The legal services contract is 5 years in its term. In 2018, Dobson, Parker, Bim, and Caparella, and also Bradley, Arendt, Bolton, and Cummings were awarded the contract in the previous 5-year term. A joint MTA and Davidson Transit Organization request for a proposal for legal services was issued on July 6th. In that, the solicitation to the agency went to the transit talent and our B2G supplier diversity procurement website, and also emailed directly to our firms that had expressed interest in the legal services solicitation. Dobson, Parker, and Bradley submitted 2 proposals for the MTA Board Secretary and MTA General Services back on August 6, 2023. We had other proposers we did not have other proposers. We had a third proposer as well for just the DTA General Counsel Services. After our review of the proposals, the Evaluation Committee recommended that Board Secretary Services be awarded to Dobson Parker. The Board Secretary, Dobson Parker, will have the following responsibilities: attending monthly Board of Director meetings and provide legal service and conduct meetings, including interpretation of applicable open meeting laws, and also conduct other meetings on behalf of this board. Also attend committee meetings on behalf of MTA. The committee evaluation recommends awarding the MTA General Counsel Services to Dobson Parker, and those services should include as well review and draft and negotiate contracts and leases, legal documents, in addition to advising in government grants, contracts, corporate and tax exemption documents, trade and copyright issues, responses to subpoena, court orders and requests, and attend Board of Director meetings on top of conducting litigation as necessary. The Evaluation Committee also recommends that awarding a contract to Bradley for legal services that may include advising law and regulation in regards to real property, such as commercial and residential property developments, as which may require real estate financing, but also look at real estate investment trusts, land sales, and other issues that deals with real property. Negotiation and drafting contracts, and regarding our real estate transaction and other services. The staff recommends and brings to the board that you provide the CEO, Stephen Bland, to the authority to enter into a contract with Dobson Parker, Bims, and Caparella in the amount to not exceed $500,000 for a 5-year contract term. In addition, also provide the authority for the Chief Executive Officer to enter into a contract with Bradley, Arendt, Bolton, Cummings to not exceed $450,000 over a 5-year term. If there are any other, these funds will be part of the operating annual budget and also capital budget as required. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Malone. Any questions for Mr. Malone after that pretty thorough explanation of legal services?
One question, is 5 years a standard term, or is that new that we're doing 5 years?
It's really a kind of a standard terms what we've done the last few times in our procurement process. What it does is kind of builds a continuity, and also to continues to allow us to really kind of work with our council to take care of different matters. There are always the matters that kind of roll over and spill over from year to year.
And around 5 years is pretty much the maximum term that Federal Transit Administration looks at. It's not that they would invalidate something longer, but they sort of raise their eyebrows if you go beyond 5 years. Some of our other professional services, you'll see us doing a lot of 3 years with 2 one-year renewal options is pretty common. But frankly, and I think Jessica can attest to this because she was on the evaluation committee, We don't want to do this too often.
Well, that was going to be my comment, which is I really appreciate, because it's, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So Margaret has done an extraordinary job, and I see Richard Warren here, and we're so appreciative. So this makes, I think this makes a lot of good sense, so.
Any other thoughts or comments?
I just want to echo that. It's a true pleasure to work with Margaret on a regular basis. It had the continuity, and her excellent legal services has been good for MTA. And I know that it will continue. And we're good to have Bradley here as well, so thank you.
Thank you. The Operations and Finance Committee recommends to the board to approve the recommendation by the staff.
Okay, so could that be a motion?
That is indeed a motion.
It is indeed.
This is indeed a second.
This is indeed a second. And again, this is the great work of Margaret, teaching me to ask these questions this way, right? So indeed, what a good motion for us to, and second, to have in front of us today. So any further comments, questions? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second. I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Awesome. Welcome back.
We have legal counsel, yay.
Madam Chair, can I just have a?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Our firm really, really values the work that we do with MTA and the relationships we have, and I'm really looking forward to another 5 years. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm speaking for Richard too, right?
Well, Richard, is there anything you want to add to the conversation? We've got lots going on, so we're grateful for both of you and your firms. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I did call for the vote. We did.
Yeah, we did.
You're good.
Okay, good.
And
I just
thank you.
wanted to vote again, that's all.
Looks like Vince might be, yes, he is. Okay. So up next in the Operations and Finance Committee, we have MTA Third-Party Administrator Services, also described to us by Vince Malone. It is page 21 in your board book, MA 23030. Okay, Vince, it's all you.
Thank you. This board action is brought to you for our third-party administrator claims management. It deals with our auto and accident and liability claims. Our TPA works in conjunction with our insurance carrier. I think a few months ago, we brought that to you as well. And so we are, current contract with Brentwood Services is due to expire on November 1st, 2023. In anticipation of expiring contract, the joint MTA and Davidson Transit Organization RFP was issued on May 5th, 2023. The firms could propose to provide DTO workers' comp TPA services, MTA third-party administration services, and liability claims TPA services, or both. 6 proposals were received by June 2nd, 2023. Those are the list of firms that actually submitted their proposals. 2 of those came out that we looked at and reviewed for further evaluation. In our criteria, we looked at a 100-point total score scale, and we had cost proposals that ranged from $425,000 to $4.7 million.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
It is.
It wasn't a typo?
No, it was not a typo. Yeah. Yeah, it was not a typo at all. After reviewing the written proposals, you'll be happy to know that we did not select the 4.7 million.
Thank you for that.
The evaluation committee invited 2 top-ranked proposers, Brentwood Services, which is the incumbent, and then Charles Taylor for the interview and presentation that was requested, and the team went through and evaluated their firms, and then also looked at what they had as far as their claims management system. Charles Taylor had contact applications that were web-based that will allow our employees to really kind of work and get really on-time information through the claims evaluation process. This was something that they had in place for several years, and based off our review, they look to be very ahead of the game on things. This would help us reduce some delays in resolving claims, and Charles Taylor is also being utilized by Nashville Electric Services, the Transit Authority of River City in Kentucky, Pace Suburban Bus in Chicago, and other transit agencies across the nation. Charles Taylor initial price for their TPA and liability services were $622,900, but we had a best and final offer discussion, and they came back with $610,500. This is above our estimate, which was at $522,533. The evaluation committee came back unanimously and ranked Charles Taylor as the top-ranked proposer for this. Our recommendation as staff is to the board to authorize our Chief Executive Officer, Stephen G. Bland, to enter into a contract with Charles Taylor in the amount of $610,500 for the TPA services for accident and third-party liability claims for a duration of 3 years plus 2 one-year options for a total contract year of 5 years. The staff also requests a 10% contingency on that, which would bring the amount to $61,000, and would the total project budget would be at $671,500 to be funded through our annual operating funds for the next 5 years.
Thank you, Vince. Any
Sure.
questions for Mr. Malone about third-party administrator services?
I do have a couple questions. Charles Taylor, is it local?
No, they're not.
Okay, where are they located?
They're in several different cities, but I think they're, I want to say they are in Missouri.
Okay.
It mainly is their main office, but they're in Kentucky, Missouri, they're in Florida. They're kind of spread around. They deal with a lot of different transit agencies across the nation.
And I'm assuming the Brentwood services was here locally?
They were
Was-
local.
Okay.
Yes, they were.
And do you feel comfortable with that proximity difference, with Brentwood being local and this one not being local?
Yes, we do. We
Okay.
thought about that, and we went through it, and the evaluation committee really hammered in on that quite a bit, to move from something local to something a little more remote, and then how does communication is. So when we spoke with their, some of their references, that was one of the things we looked at as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any further questions? It is my pleasure as the Chair of the Operations and Finance Committee to make a motion for the board to approve the staff recommendation to authorize President and CEO Steve Bland to enter into a contract as noted in the board book.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion, there's a second. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Very well.
Up next, Patrick
Good job,
Hester.
Vince.
Oh, yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, Vince.
Well done, Vince.
We're going to hear about the Nestor Facility East Side Sewer Line Contract Amendment, and the sewer line saga continues. Chapter 5, so turn to page 20.
Chapter 50.
Probably. We're looking at MA 23-031 on page 23 of your board book. And tell us all about Nestor Facility East Side Sewer Line Contract Amendment, please, Patrick.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Board Chair, Vice Chair, and board members. And it's a pleasure to be in front of you again, and I appreciate it. Again, it's MA 23-031, and the Nestor East Side Sewer Project is part of the emergency procurement to address the 48-inch failing sanitary sewer line. And LNG was awarded the project for a total base bid of $275,910. And we're here today seeking approval for the additional $35,000 that that was above the total project budget of $335,000. And The reason for those additional funds are for approving the additional pipe extensions to help mitigate risk of the 48-inch sewer abandonment and also to future ready the underground storage tank removal. That's a future project of ours. And there are some benefits to that, which are cost and time savings. And that saved us on design, future construction, and future permitting efforts, which saved us probably around between $100,000 and $150,000, plus a lot of time in the future there. We installed around, you see there, 121 feet of additional pipe and 130 tons of additional paving. The actual paving was one that was to make the grades what they needed to be in the back for our bus lot to be appropriate, which took more than what I thought they would initially, and the engineers thought initially too. So that was part of a pretty big lump there. But with all the work done, with all the mitigation efforts of the abandonment and future rating the underground storage tank project, the staff requests the board to approve an increase of $35,000 for the cost of additional sewer line and pavement repairs for the Nestor Facility East Side Sewer Line contract, resulting in a total contract value of $370,000. Funds utilized for this project are a federal 5339 formula with 10% state and 10% local match.
Thank you, Mr. Hester. So basically, we used up the entire contract and its contingency, and now we're being asked to approve an additional $35,000.
Correct.
Okay, just so I was clear. Any other questions for Mr. Hester?
Do we think this is the end of this?
It's the end of the east side.
Okay.
So we have the whole back lot.
All I know is in my business, you see the word change order, and it's never a positive thing. So I'm just wondering if we think this is going to get it
We have the
done.
rear connection all done. So now we're on the west side.
Okay.
Thing I'd highlight on this change order, it doesn't change the original work. It's doing extra work in lieu of future work we would have had to do. So it's actually a cost savings relative to
Sure.
what it
Okay.
might have been.
Good. That's
So
super
it's
helpful.
in
Thank you.
contrast with probably most of the change orders that you and I are used to seeing.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for that, Steve, and thank you, Janet. I think.
Yeah, I had a question. So if we're leveraging this for future projects, then that cost savings, are we identifying, or has the contractor identified that as he sees prices starting to de-escalate now, that this will be in line, or are we really saving anything, I guess is my bigger question. Are we really saving anything knowing that the prices are now starting to either level or steady or drop?
Oh, we're absolutely saving. We're saving on, just for the underground storage tank removal project itself. Now we just have the underground storage tank team on site instead of an additional plumbing or utility service on site as well. So it's an additional mobilization. It's an additional manhole that we saved getting installed along with additional piping. So we'd absolutely save it and absolutely design with it as well. So we'd have to design the sewer to be moved as well instead of this underground storage tank team.
And so this would be, it says a contract amendment, so this will actually be an amendment to the existing contract, to the contractor. Okay.
Any other questions or comments about the ongoing East Side Sewer Line saga?
East side is done.
East Side is done. I know, that's what I'm thinking too, and also I want it in the books, the East Side is done, this is done.
Isn't
can
there a
give you an
song
update
about
on the
East
west
Side
side.
and West Side?
Okay, so thank you for that, Patrick. And so as the Chair of the Operations and Finance Committee, it is my pleasure to make a motion and for the board to adopt and to approve the staff recommendation for MA 23031, the increase of $35,000 for the cost of additional sewer lines and pavement for the Nestor facility.
For the East Side. For the East Side. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Janet Miller.
There's a motion. There's a second. Is there any further discussion?
Will there be any contingency for this new allocation?
No, it's done.
Okay. All right. Love it. All right. That was it.
That's it. Good question. Okay. So if hearing no further questions or comments, I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, east side.
Thank you, Board.
All right. Thank you for that, Mr. Hester. Last but not least, we're going to hear from Nick Oldham, who is the Chief Safety and Security Officer here at WECO, and we're going to hear about the System Security Assessment Contract, page 25 of the board book, MA23-032. I give you the floor.
Thank you, Chair Dolphin, Madam Chair, and all of the other extinguished board members. Thank you again for the opportunity to stand before you. So I want to give a quick recap of how we got here. Then I'll talk, the most time I'll spend is on the scope of the security assessment contract, and then I'll ask for the request. So how do we get here? So you guys remember, hopefully you remember a few years ago, the FTA released a Dear Colleague letter saying that urbanized transit agencies needed to required a public transportation agency safety plan, which was founded on SMS principles. So the SMS safety management system, basically a comprehensive, proactive approach to mitigating and managing safety. So how we're here on the security side is that this is just a continuation of our efforts to be proactive in mitigating on the safety side. This is just on the security side. So we're asking for a contractor to come in and give us a comprehensive review of our security procedures and the technology, and hopes that we'll improve and enhance the customer and our employee experience as it relates to security. So in March of 2022, we issued a request for information asking firms to suggest strategies for a comprehensive security assessment. We received a total of 11 responses back. We took those responses to the RFI and developed the scope for the RFP. So I'll talk a little bit about the scope. This is where I kind of get excited on the scope, and then I'll kind of tell you my favorite one. So I'll give you our top 5. So one is to develop a comprehensive risk-based assessment for all facilities. And that includes risk analysis, threat assessment, vulnerability assessment, and emergency management planning. 2, peer agency benchmarking with respect to incident frequency, type, and severity, as well as how they implement security management. Number 3, environmental design solutions such as landscaping, architecture, and lighting, as we're now aware that certain security hazards can be mitigated out in the design phase of the project. Number 4, assess our current security staffing model and make recommendations for either a new model or improve our current staffing patterns. And here's where I get a bit excited. An all hazards analysis of onboard operations of our entire fleet of revenue vehicles, our park and ride facilities, individual bus stops, neighborhood transit centers, our Elizabeth Duff Transit Center at WeGo Central, administrative office, the whole gamut. So really an all analysis of all of our facilities and assets to see how we can improve and mitigate safety or security strategies. And then finally, identify current and emerging practices in the public transportation industry where supportive services might be deployed for individuals that are either dealing with homelessness, substance abuse, or mental health issues, and to improve the overall perception of security on our system. So that was in March of 2022. We issued the RFP and made it public in March of 2023. We had 7 firms respond and submit their proposals for the project. In May of 2023, the RFP was graded by our evaluation team, which consisted of internal members of our senior leadership from different departments, as well as we like to give thanks to Chief Drake, who provided us one of his sergeants to be on the evaluation team. And so then we looked at the project based on project approach, the key personnel, qualifications and experience, schedule, and cost. The top 4 consultant firms were requested for interviews. In August of 2023, we conducted those interviews, and the contractor that came out on top was Marine Tiger Technologies, and they were recommended to be awarded the contract. So, staff requested the board provide the chief executive officer the authority to enter into a contract with Marine Tiger Technologies in the amount of $614,567.38 for a duration of 28 months, with a milestone for final recommendations in by 12 months. The staff also requests a contingency in the amount of $61,456.74 to be used at the agency's discretion to assist in the implementation for final recommendations for a total budget, project budget of $676,024.12. This project was part of the fiscal year 2023 capital plan and will utilize federal 5307 formula funding with 10% state and 10% local match. That is my report. Chair Dolphin, I will turn it back to you and any board members with questions.
Thank you so much for that report.
My pleasure.
Mr. Oldham, any questions about the system security assessment contract?
Go ahead. You go. No, you go.
Is this the first time we've done this to this extent?
In my knowledge, yes.
I'm not aware of 10 years. I don't know if anything. Mike, you might.
I don't know. No.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, this is exciting.
I had a comment and a
Huge
question.
project.
So the comment is, this is great. There's nothing that makes me more sick if I turn on the news and see something's happened. And we're just in such a contentious world that
Sure.
I just think safety for everybody should be paramount. So really excited about that. The question is, so they're going to come back and say things like, okay, your camera coverage in your stairwells isn't appropriate or something like that. And
Sure.
then, so they're doing the consulting, and then the next phase, you'll have to go buy or you'll have to go do whatever they tell you to do, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right, so following on this, there will be more funds that you'll come back for actual, we need better shrubbery, we need cameras, we need, so this is the consulting piece of it.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
there would be, I would put this akin to the access improvement program, where this board will get several touches with this project. You'll get direct reporting from the consulting team, because even beyond the hard improvements, which might be landscaping or lighting or video surveillance, is the staffing approach. You know, Nick alluded to a lot of what, well, just general policing, but what a lot of the big city transit agencies are moving more toward that, you know, resource officer type thing, where instead of it just being kind of hardcore security, it's sort of mixed with social services to sort of preempt some of the things that might happen. So it could very well have operating budget impacts, will almost certainly have capital budget impacts, but to Gail's point, it's really kind of taken that, okay, it's a zero-base approach, and what are we doing well? You know, what do we need to keep and what do we need to modify? And the nature of our system's changing. Just by virtue of the fact in the last 10 years, we've gone from 100 shelters to 285.
That's right.
You know, each one of those is a little building.
Right.
Each one of those is a facility. Moving more toward the neighborhood transit centers. And it's one thing when you have that concentration of risk at Central for all the downside of it. It's pretty easy, throw all your resources at that.
Right.
So, you know, apart from just, okay, we've never really done this and it's way overdue, generally is the fact that we are very much changing the nature of what the system is. So the approach to security can't stay the same.
And it's on fleet as well, so they're gonna take a look
Absolutely.
at what's actually happening on the buses, right?
Absolutely.
It'd be so interesting
Yeah.
to see the benchmark data, to
Yeah.
see if we're having
Yeah.
more of a problem than similar transit agencies, so I'm all for this.
And
Thank
part
you.
of the issue too will be outreach to customers. What's your perception of security?
Sure.
What is the, what are the weak links in the chain? You know, is it on board? Is it waiting at the stop? Is it walking to the stop? Is
Sure.
it the
Yeah.
transfer experience? You know, so it's basically that whole trip chain experience.
And that was another key component of, you know, as we were doing the evaluations, was the public engagement component of it. You know, we went back and forth for a long time on who we felt was going to give us the best bang, to really engage the public to understand where our pinch points were.
Very good. I love the holistic nature of it. both in what the scope is and also how you evaluated the RFPs. I think what you've given us here is a really great lens to compare the RFPs. I did have a question though, since you mentioned, Steve, this is going to be for our existing stock and infrastructure, correct? Will this be something that we would need to be revisiting in, say, 5 years as our stock and infrastructure grow?
We would probably need to revisit it periodically, but for example, we would need to revisit it every time we had a new neighborhood transit center. You know, there'd be sort of a skeleton approach to that.
I would say, would it offer us the ability to develop some best practices as we're designing and building these things?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You know, if you fundamentally change the nature of the system, then it would probably need a fundamental revisit. And a great example is rail. Having run a multimodal system, security on a rail system is entirely a different animal than security on a bus system. So I wanted to echo one of the things that Nick mentioned. Really want to give a shout out and terrific thanks to Chief Drake and MNPD in general. From the get-go, we had an initial sit down with the chief and his command staff to talk about what we were trying to accomplish, and they were on board and fully supportive from day one, including assigning staff resources to the entire process, and a commitment to work with the consultants, you know, as we kind of go through this process.
Oh, brilliant. So we're going to be able to.
Absolutely.
That's
'Cause, I mean,
nice. That's a nice
They
collaboration.
are a huge partner in what we're doing. So the honest truth is Marine Tiger would not be able to give us what we're asking for without their full engagement.
Absolutely.
And I want to say one more thing about this. I think that if we're looking at building a more transformative mobility system and transit system, I think that having a really strong system for security will go a long way in assuring public trust.
It's the price of admission. If people don't feel secure, they're not going to, I don't care how good your service is.
Yeah, so I do want to ensure that, I know you said we're going to be outreaching to current transit ridership, but what about folks who aren't riding? Will there be a component of asking them about their comfort level in riding transit and?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, no question.
Brilliant. Any other questions for Mr. Oldham?
One last question is, I see the final report is 24 months from now. Is there any preliminary report that we get before then?
Yeah, so we'll get the final recommendations at 12 months. And then they'll stay on with us for an additional 12 months to kind of help us develop and implement.
Yeah, that kind of sounds like a long time.
Yeah.
I also want to say one more thing, that I do see that we're able to use the federal 5307 dollars for this. I think that's really great also.
Yeah, this is considered a planning project, which is 5307 eligible.
Great. It is my enthusiastic pleasure to be able to make a motion to the board to approve the recommendation that staff requests of the board to provide the chief executive officer the authority to enter into the contract with Marine Tiger Technologies for the system security assessment contract.
Second.
There's a motion and a second, and is there any further discussion? I will say this, though, that I think this is great, and I think that not only are we being a leader in keeping Nashville safe in all things that we do, that we're being very proactive to keep Nashville safe. And we're showing others in our city how to do it, and we're also showing others with the partnership with Metro Nashville Police Department how to be collaborative, and that it takes all of us collectively to make our city safe. And I congratulate you, Steve, and you, Nick, on really going forward with this. This is just really awesome. So I just wanted to say that before I call for the vote. And also, I think you did mention in that this is a DBE, it meets all your guidelines with that as well.
Absolutely.
So just wanted to add that. All that being said, no further comments. I will call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Here you have safety.
Safety first, even though we put it last today.
But the best for last.
There you go. So this concludes the Operations and Finance Committee, Madam Chair, and I hand it back to you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dolphin. What a great report today. Lots of great stuff. So, Ms. Miller, you're up. Nice.
Okay, thank you. So we have the New Initiatives and Community Engagement Committee portion of our program, and this is going to be a fun conversation because we're going to forecast our capital needs for the next 4 years, right, Felix?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Felix is going to lead us through this discussion.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Happy fall. I think this is a great segue. You saw some examples of what, goes into the capital plan. And I can tell you right now that on this proposed plan, you will not find the east side sewer line because it's done. So this is great. So, yeah, right, Patrick? Patrick promised it. You have in your package the proposed fiscal year 2024 through 2028 capital investment plan for the MTA. I have some slides to give you the highlights of the plan. As a reminder, this is a multi-year plan. It's a 5-year plan. The main emphasis is always on year first. That's where we have a better sense on what the status of the projects are, what the funding is. Outer years is a little bit more of planning ahead. But since we bring this to you every year, those outer years get updated every time we come before you. But the goals of the plan is to prioritize those capital needs so you understand what those projects are, identify the funding sources, and set some timelines for the projects. And it's a balance between making sure that we comply with those things that are we have to comply with because of regulations, but also making sure that the assets that we have are keeping in good working order, and making sure that we plan ahead for any expansion and growth needs. This slide is just an overview of the spectrum of funding sources. If those of you that were in the board at the time, if you remember when Billy did her presentation on grants, she went over all those different sources and alphabet and the different rules with all of those. I won't get there with you today, but I will just highlight that we have federal, state, local, and other sources. On the federal side, we have formula money, but we also have discretionary funding sources as well. And they can come from the Federal Transit, as well as the Federal Highway Administration. As you can see, the CMAQ, Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality, as well as the Surface Transportation Block Grant, those are federal highway funding sources that we can have access to in a discretionary way. STBG is under the purview of GNRC, the MPO. So those are potential funding sources as well. But basically, all of these are 80%, so it requires a 20% match. On those capital items, the state, TDOT provides a 10% match of that 20, and the other 10 comes from local sources. On the state side, we have improved ag money, which we've been very successful in securing in past years. Actually, for this plan, we are assuming an $8 million a year in Improve Act. And we have some of the projects that we've been successful in with this funding source in previous years include the Rip Patten North Nashville Transit Center, the Antioch Transit Center, as well as bus stop improvements. Also, under local, we have 100% capital funding and matches required for grants. That comes from Metro, mostly from the capital spending plan. We are making an assumption of about $35 million a year from this funding source moving forward. This is including the matches for the grants. I forgot to mention on the discretionary, the 5339, this is the reason why FTA came to town a couple of weeks ago to hand us a $5 million check. So that was a great example of discretionary funding sources that we applied toward.
They can come back anytime they want, can't they,
Absolutely,
Felix?
as long as they bring a check.
That's right.
In terms of looking at funding projections, fiscal year 24 looks good for the most part. There's a negative balance on fiscal years 25 and 26. And these are basically related to major infrastructure projects like the Sobro Transit Center and the high capacity in downtown that we are proposing, also Murfreesboro Pike high capacity project. The status of those is still undetermined. However, at the end of the plan, we see a funding balance of 51.6 million in the positive that can roll over to the next year of the plan. So basically, some of those projects, if, when it comes down to a shortfall, we're always gonna default to the projects that are regulatory or state of good repair. Those are always gonna take priority when we're talking about these.
If I can just jump in on that comment Felix made, he and his staff do an excellent job, and Billy, at identifying which projects are going to be most attractive for discretionary sources. So when you see those shortfalls, we don't want to assume we're going to get a highly competitive grant, but we'll be looking at those projects that would score highest in some of those categories. And that's essentially what we've been successful at doing recently.
So in this slide, we're showing the main categories that we divide the projects in the plan. So there's 5 main categories. The first one being safety and regulatory. Like those are projects that are required by some type of law or regulation. We also have the preventive maintenance and ADA capitalization transfer of funding. That's we transfer 5307 formula capital dollars for operational preventive maintenance and complementary paratransit needs for ADA. So this amount we look at in an annual basis just to make sure that there's a good balance between the operations and the capital budget. But this is a common practice between transit agencies, and it's allowed under the federal law. And especially when you don't have dedicated funding, this is one of the things that we have to do in order to supplement the operations. This category also includes the long-term leases that we have for the North Nashville Transit Center and the outbound shelter across the street. State of good repair, making sure that we have a well-maintained and reliable infrastructure for our service. Business improvements are designed to enhance a better delivery of our service to the customers. And then In Motion is related to the recommendations from the In Motion plan on how to improve the service. So the 2 graphics that you see in this slide, the first one at the top is that distribution of projects and funding among those categories for the first year of the plan. The one at the bottom is the same, but it's just looking at the 5 years of the plan. So basically, the first year is $96 million of investments, $96 million of investments, and the 5 years, $321.2 million. So in terms of what we're going to be looking at with these, some projects that I wanted to highlight, under safety and regulatory, we are doing some improvements to security-wise, and just very in line with what Nick was mentioning. At our Nestor building, this includes building 3 security guard houses with batch access and security barriers for the different gates for officers to monitor the facility. We also have the bus stop lighting. I don't know if you've been seeing some of these stops taking place across the system. In places where we don't have shelters or benches, this is a small footprint, but still allows the possibility for somebody to wait. It's funny, as we were coming to the meeting, we were driving, and Robert mentioned that we had seen at one location a person sitting on a cinder block. I sent that picture to Denise a few months back, and now there's a nice bench there now in place, one of these. So that's how we identify some of these potential locations. Absolutely. In terms of capitalization, as I mentioned, the leases for the North Nashville Transit Center. State of good repair, we continue. A big focus of the plan is always the fleet, maintaining our fleet in a state of good repair. Also, we have 3 main facilities, Nestor, Wego Central, as well as a Maya administrative building. So those are some of the things that we continue, to make sure that we tend to those facilities. Business improvements, we have a project that is for a coverage area at our Maya for the CDL testing. We know that, sometimes they're out there and there's only one little tree that sometimes they gather around just to get some shade. So this will allow for a better utilization and of the, from the elements, protection from the elements. And then in terms of the in-motion improvement and expansion, the downtown transit priority, this is associated with the Connect Downtown project that NDOT is leading. We know that bus lanes, transit priority corridors are a main goal for this project. So this infrastructure related to these that we are accounting for, as well as the Antioch Transit Center. This is gonna be an anchor for our Route 55 and future high-capacity transit on the Murfreesboro Pike corridor. This is very important and also an opportunity to have regional and local services connect. So these are a summary of some of these projects. The information is on your packet. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And the ask from staff today is that the board adopt the fiscal year 2024 through 2028 capital investment plan for the MTA.
Great. Thank you so much, Felix. It's exciting. I'm sure we all have questions. I'm going to start because it's probably the pink suede elephant in the room, which is Mayor Cooper was very, very good till we go within the limits of what he could do. We have a new mayor who is all about transit, a new council that's going to be very supportive. I assume this document is fluid enough so that if in 2 years we get dedicated funding, with me, it's always like we need to think big, not small. So this is adaptable, I guess is my question, right? Because who knows within 2 years what the new administration could dream up, right, with our support.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned, usually the first year is kind of like the more defined. Everything else, we are planning ahead, but it's definitely that nimble that we can adapt. Mm-hmm. And in the case of dedicated funding, most of that source is usually used for operations. So what that could do is also free up money for some of the capital projects moving forward.
Interesting, thank you. Who else
The
has-
other things I would add to that is, number one, if we needed to, we come back next month and amend it.
Okay.
Number two, we're going to be pretty aggressive about our asks. You and I
Right.
have talked about that.
Yeah.
Number three, this is the foundation we use. So ultimately, GNRC will ask us for input into the regional plan and the transportation improvement programs. Metro Planning asks us for project lists for the capital improvement budget. Metro Finance asks us for the capital spending plan. So this is the foundation that kind of builds those documents. We don't pull those projects out of our hat.
Right.
That's what we have going on here. And the thing I would add about dedicated funding, I agree with what Felix says, but dedicated funding is essential to our capital program because what it would allow for is for us to go into debt with a repayment source for larger projects.
Right.
Because right now, we are leaving a lot of money on the table at the federal level because we just have no reliable source to say, yeah, here's how we're going to come up with our local match. It's really hard to say, well, for the next 8 years, we'll go every year and hope we get it when you're competing with somebody who's got a whatever, funding source that they can use to pay down a bond issue that they put out to pay for those projects. So, yeah, I would agree on the operating, but it would easily be, I think we were looking at the original referendum is probably 60-40 capital to operating.
Interesting. Other questions, comments?
I just want to highlight and reiterate Steve's last comment, and it's even in the explanation in here. It says, this level of metro funding would not provide necessary funding to deliver the high-capacity transit corridor projects, such as the Murfreesboro Pike Rapid Bus Transit. Because I was looking at the project plan budget line items, and I had made some notes. I was curious. In fiscal year 25, you're allocating 25 million. But I can't imagine that would build the BRT, right? So that's just a continuation
Couple
of
of
the
blocks.
planning.
Two fantastic
Just
blocks.
$25 million and you got it. No, that's not going to happen. Okay, thank you. And then the Antioch Transit Center, so next year we're looking at 2.5 million, and then in fiscal year 25 is 16.7.
Yeah, and that's in addition to prior year and money we have on hand.
Right.
It's in addition to the $5 million that
And that will
FTA
get
and the $8 million from
fine-tuned.
TDOT, right?
Yeah, so not to get too much in the weeds on that project, that number will get fine-tuned. The steps in that process are, so it's in all of the requisite Metro plans. Right now, as they're working through all the land deals on Global Mall, we have to finalize, Richard will be hip deep in this, the boundaries of our property.
Right.
Because Metro owns the land, but we have to have continuing use and control, so we have to figure out that transaction, including a surveyed boundary identification. And then once we have that, we can go into design, and then we'll have a better idea of the scope. And this is going to be way different than North Nashville and certainly Hillsborough in that it's going to be structured parking on it and in all likelihood, some form of joint development over the top of it. So to say, what's it going to cost right now? I don't want Ron coming back saying, this is like that damn East Side Sewer project.
No, but I was just curious, that's not to build it out, that's to continue
For right now,
The build up
it's,
to
I mean,
that.
that's a pretty good.
It is.
This would be a pretty good number for a traditional, but if there's
Okay.
some bigger purpose that the community needs, and that's frankly where you run into issues with transit projects around the country, isn't typically the transit project that runs over, it's when, we can add a park to this, and we can do this for this.
Right.
So, and that's gonna have to come through that dialogue as we go into the actual design process and that dialogue with the Antioch community. I know for a fact, and we saw it at the event, that there are some very strong opinions down there about what goes into it, what it looks like, and those sorts of things.
Yeah, so I'm highly encouraged by the look ahead for the next 4 years. Thank you for that. And I think that will wrap up my comments and questions. Thanks, Janet.
How about you, Ron? Anything?
I just commend you guys for taking the foresight to look ahead like this, knowing that, we don't have everything that we need, all the resources that we need, but doing what you can with what you have is hats off to you guys for what you do, so.
That's like our theme song.
Sadly, it is, yes. Anything from you, Gail?
Oh, no, I just sort of echo everyone's comments, and it's always nice to have this sitting here, so when something does come up, we're
Right.
ready and we're prepared. And sometimes you won't know that somebody else is thinking about something similar, but you say, oh, yeah, but we can do that because we are prepared. So I appreciate as well the preparation.
I have one last question that's kind of random. So let's say in a perfect universe, a magic wand is waved and we get every 10-minute service. You're going to need a lot more equipment. Are we still having supply chain issues has that loosened up? Are there other limiting factors outside of just
I'd
cash?
let Andy and Carl touch on what.
Say that some of the supply chain issues on the highway side we're starting to see the bottlenecks starting to ease up, but the supply it's still pretty evident. We're still probably looking for another 2-3 years
Yeah.
for it to get back to pre-pandemic
Right.
supply chain.
And this is all going to take time, so. And then choice lanes, when do we think we could potentially see the state come through and say, let's put a choice lane from Antioch to downtown?
I think Commissioner Illy would probably jump all over me if I tried to answer that question.
Okay,
so.
okay.
I know he would like to get them in as quickly as possible,
Yes,
so.
okay.
And we've been very encouraged by the dialogue with TDOT on that. They've been very active in inviting us into that process because apparently there's a tremendous amount of interest in the private sector,
Okay.
on working in Nashville on those sorts of projects. So.
Great. Any other questions, comments? Well
But when they're
done.
ready, we're prepared.
All right, so since we are prepared for the next 5 years, the New Initiatives and Community Engagement Committee would then like to make a motion that the board adopt the 24 to 28 capital investment plan as presented by Felix.
So there is a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
There's a motion, a second. Any further conversation, comments? Hearing none, then I will call for the vote. All those in favor of this prepared plan, say aye.
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 Well done. Got a lot done today.
Well done. So that concludes the new initiatives and community engagement committee portion of our session.
Well, thank you, Ms. Miller. Was great. So, Steve, you're on.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I have a few items to report on. As was alluded to in public comment, we do have our fall service changes going into effect this coming Sunday. Some of the highlights include more frequent service on 4 of our routes, longer service hours on 11 of our routes, plus access, and 5 new WeGo link zones. As a reminder, on October 1st, we are also converting over the payment system so that we will no longer be issuing onboard magnetic media. Free transfers are absolutely still available, but you have to be on Quick Ticket to get it. Same thing with day passes, fare capping, and all of that. And we're seeing good penetration, but it's about time to pull that off so we can deal with reliability issues, speed up the system, and frankly, save people money. The feedback we've gotten from folks once they adopted Quick Ticket wasn't sure I want to do it at first, couldn't figure it out at first. Now that I know how to do it, I love it and would never go back. Work continues at a great pace on the Ernest Rip Patton Jr. North Nashville Transit Center with a lot of visible activity. We're going to have Kia present to you next month on the status of that project, including, I'm sure, quite a few photos and visuals of progress on the site. Do want to mention, though, on Tuesday, October 24th, we'll be holding a community meeting at the Bordeaux Public Library to both report out public progress on the project, but also to have our artist team discuss their preliminary designs. So particularly for those of you with an artistic bent, not me, you may want to come out. And we got, at the initial session, we got really good community response and really good feedback, so that should be really neat. It was mentioned earlier, but I want to specifically thank Gail and Jessica for coming out to our celebration in Antioch on September 12th, where we joined with quite a few dignitaries and residents of that neighborhood to accept the big check of $5 million from Federal Transit Administration. I tried, no bank would cash it. So I guess there's a different way, Billy, that we have to get to that money. Some of the dignitaries we had there, in addition to our Federal Transit Regional Administrator, Yvette Taylor, were Mayor Cooper, Deputy Governor and TDOT Commissioner Butch Ely, and District Council Member Joy Stiles. I'm just scratching the surface. And I mentioned the next steps in this project. So I know in fact, I saw Senator Oliver over the weekend, and she asked, when are we going to get, when's the groundbreaking? I said, well, we have a couple steps to go through to get property designed, et cetera. But we'll continue to move that along. By the way, while we had Dr. Taylor and her staff in town, we also took the opportunity to meet with them on quite a few projects. It had been, the last time they were in Nashville was prior to the pandemic. So, and Yvette even commented on the progress we're making. We took them down to see the Hillsborough Transit Center. The last time we showed them that site, we stood in the mall parking lot across the street and we watched school kids in the overcrowded shelter kind of huddled up against each other, and she really commented on the transformation of that site. We took her out to the North Nashville Center site. We showed her the East Bank. We basically ran her in a bus up and down the East Bank, stood on the pedestrian bridge, and to be frank, she instantly recognized the potential of that. She's not a Nashvilleian, she's from Atlanta. So she instantly recognized the potential of that site, not just for overall development, but from a transit perspective. And of course, we drove the Murfreesboro Pike Corridor and looked at our Sobro hub site on our way down to the Antioch event. Relative to the transition to our new mayor and council, I had the opportunity to present to the new council orientation session this past Saturday at the Music City Center. So I really want to give a terrific thanks to Vice Mayor Angie Henderson for inviting us to that event. And then after the orientation, they held a reception for department heads and council members. And I think we have a lot to be optimistic about. I got to talk to 6 or 7 of the new members who all have a very strong interest in transit and what we do. So we'll be looking forward to working with them. Next week, I'll be, on the same day, I'll be meeting with the mayor and his staff on transit issues, and also with the mayor's transition team on transit issues. In addition to those larger meetings, we've begun doing some one-on-one meetings with our new council members, particularly who have specific interests or issues in their districts, so that's been really positive. You know, with all that's been going on in Nashville lately, unfortunately, I had to miss our annual State Transit Association and meeting in Memphis a week or so ago. I was desperately trying to get out there, but it just didn't work out. But I can report that we had another strong showing, although I will say to Andy, you can't be so generous to the home team anymore and let Memphis take some of those trophies. You know, I think I owe my counterpart there probably a couple of drinks, because they did pretty well, but we also did very well. One thing I would definitely like to report, I think I saw her earlier, is fresh off of her triumphant FTA triennial review, our own grants administrator, Billy Higgins, was named the state's Urban Transit System Support Employee of the Year. And I can also report in terms of the rodeo, another strong showing. In the cutaway van division, Scott Wallace won 3rd place. Joyce Banks won 1st place in cutaway van. Kevin Sentis placed 3rd in the 30-foot bus division, and Troy Willis placed 2nd in the bus maintenance division. So again, another strong performance by our team. Speaking of things, so Iran, this is my version of the East Side Sewer project. I believe I have finally completed my service on the evaluation committee for the East Bank Development Team proposals. So the committee unanimously recommended Fallon Partners out of Boston to advance those projects, and we'll likely be working closely with them and obviously Metro Planning and the mayor's office to advance some of the transit elements of that plan. I got to participate in a panel, so the whole connection between transit and affordable housing and accessible housing is certainly gaining a lot of steam nationally and also locally. A couple weeks ago, I participated on a panel with Brent Elrod from Urban Housing Solutions and Evan Holliday from Holiday Partners, two of the bigger nonprofit providers of, I guess Evan's firm is for profit, of accessible and affordable housing, on a panel for a visiting delegation from Greenville, South Carolina. And a lot of good discussion and a lot of good follow-up with Brent and the folks at Holiday. We hosted a meeting, speaking of which, we hosted a meeting of the Housing Affordability Working Group, the Urban Land Institute at WeGo Central this past month. I want to thank new board member and task force co-chair, Iran Thompson, for, I think you probably pulled some strings for me to be invited into into that group. So I appreciate that. And it was really good discussion, again, with a diverse group of folks. And I want to close, I'll give you some of the RTA highlights, but I always like to close with good news. I was really honored and delighted this morning, not that I had anything to do with any of this, as with most things. This had nothing to do with me and everything to do with everybody else at WeGo. But we got to attend Eric Melcher, David Eiler, one of our superstar operations supervisors, and myself got to attend the annual breakfast of Neighborhood Health at Belmont University. Neighborhood Health is a nonprofit healthcare provider. They provide really comprehensive and accessible healthcare to everybody, but particularly focused on our most vulnerable populations. Beyond connecting with new and old friends, we got to learn more about their mission, hear some truly inspirational stories, including one from one of Lillian's close friends who really kind of sent us off, with standing ovations. But David and I get to go up on stage and be embarrassed as their CEO, Brian Hale, recognized us with their Community Impact Award for this year. And that's in recognition for the services we provided to that community during the pandemic to help folks access both testing sites as well as vaccination sites, and also our work with the homeless community on getting access to the cold weather shelters when the weather turns bad. So our appreciation to Brian, the board, and everybody at Neighborhood Health, not just for the award and the embarrassing moments this morning, but for everything they do. They're a tremendous community partner and a tremendous community resource. By the way, if you want to look at it and pick it up, I was warned this is not glued on, so just be careful if you pick it up. On the RTA side, we continue to advance work. Speaking of Richard and the work that he's working on, we continue to advance work on negotiations for joint development project at the RTA's Donaldson Station with the H.G. Hill and Southeast Ventures community team. A lot of our efforts this past month have been working with the developers, Metro Planning, NDOT, and surrounding developers on potential intersection realignments along Donaldson Pike. Continuing to advance land acquisition toward a permanent park and ride location in Murfreesboro, the city of Murfreesboro, not just Murfreesboro Pike. And congratulations again to Felix and his team. Earlier this month, we received our final environmental clearance from Federal Transit Administration, so that allows us to go, Richard, into real estate acquisition and design processes. And if Saturday weren't already exciting enough, with the mayor's inauguration, there's going to be a festival of Metro services that we'll be participating in, having a booth at, transit treks. It's also going to be the first Nashville SC game where we're piloting direct service from the city of Murfreesboro, or Antioch Park and Ride, to Geodis Park for the games. Great partnership with Nashville SC. You can go see it on their website. You can go see it on our website if you're interested in getting to the game from those locations. On a little bit less fun note, the RTA's sunset hearing in front of the General Assembly occurs in October. On October 19th, myself and a couple of our regional mayors will be appearing before the State Legislature's Commerce, Labor, Transportation, Agriculture Joint Subcommittee of Government Operations to give testimony and answer questions from legislators, hopefully leading to an extension of the RTA's charter.
They're not going to sunset that, are they?
I would find it highly unlikely.
I would hope so.
Janet, we've had years where I'm like, ooh, this could be close. I think we're okay this year. And then finally, I would report that usage of the WeGo start of the Tennessee Titans' first home game was super strong, with over 900 riders making use of that service. So hopefully the Titans can turn it around for the next home game so we can keep that train really, really packed.
We need to get Taylor Swift. We need to get Taylor Swift dating one of our players is what we need.
Madam Chair, on that note, that concludes my report.
Oh, very good report today, Steve. It leaves me with little to nothing to say, but I'm going to say something. Since we're on the Billy Higgins train today, or bus, whichever one we want to say, I want to talk a little bit about the Antioch celebration we had. First of all, it was so exciting. It was so exciting to see so many people in Nashville just enjoying our planning and everything that we're doing. And Councilwoman George Stiles, had enough energy for all of us for like forever. And so that means that we're going to have great partnerships. But I had the distinct pleasure to sit next to Dr. Taylor for the conversation that we all had with the group. And I was never so proud to hear her sit next to me and say publicly just how great of a partner Steve Bland is and how he's an example for so many other CEOs that she works with in the regional FTA. But she didn't stop at Steve Bland. You know, she got to you, Ms. Higgins. And she just talked about just how easy it is to work with you. And not just because you get it all right, because you do, but also how kind you are when you work with her and how much you pay attention to details, and just that you're a joy to work with. And I think we all in this room feel that way too. And I'm so glad that you were given an award so you can have a chance to see how people celebrate your excellence. So I just wanted to say thank you for all that you do and for your excellence and just being you. So thank you so much.
Madam Chair, as I say, Billy is the only profit center in the company.
I know, but you know, it's nice to sit there and I've been here a little bit. And so sitting with Dr. Taylor too was great because she has always been someone that's believed in the work that's being done here at MTA. So So it was good to be with her. I'm glad she finally got back here again. She likes Nashville and she likes y'all. So like, they might be more of those checks and, and some kind of way.
She
this
sure
time-
posted enough pictures on social media.
Yeah, I like that, but it was an exciting moment because it was, again, part of these plans we've had for so long, and plans when they sort of all of a sudden come off that paper and they come to life. It was a great moment, and it was pretty exciting. The other thing is, we do have a new administration, and the mayor's inauguration is this Saturday, and I'm excited that Steve came to me with the idea about why don't we have transit for Nashvillians on this day to get to the inauguration. And as you can tell, if you read anything on social media, on the mayor's website, that it's occurring at 11:30, and he will be inaugurated at the Diane Nash Plaza, adjacent to the courthouse, really just across the street from WeGo, the Elizabeth Duff Center. And so they're going to be festival of city services, and I think we're having a table in the booth there, which is really exciting, so people can learn more about what we do. And it's a good chance for us to wear our purple and promote WeGo, so that's pretty exciting. And the inaugural committee is promoting transit treks. So when you see about all of our ways to get there, it's called transit treks. That's sort of cool, right? We might have to keep that a little bit longer. I like that. So just really want to encourage everybody to go. If you can go, go. If not, and if you can ride the bus to go, I think, why not? Right? It's good on a Saturday, and the weather's supposed to be really good. So let's just go out and celebrate our city. It's really nice to, so we have a free day. And, it's hard for me to say Mayor O'Connell, but I am so proud of Mayor O'Connell. I'm practicing it because I feel this great pride in he being mayor now, having sat at this table with him, and sort of felt like that was his first entree into this public service. I'm certain he did other things before that, but this formal public service. And I remember very distinctly him coming onto this board. And so I felt like he's, been under the wing, and he's flying quite well right now. So it's great to be able to think we can go and support him, and that we can do transit a free day, and then also celebrates the work that he has done in this city for transit, his support of transit as a council person, his support of transit as a board member has done us well. And so this is really a good way of us wishing him well as he embarks on this time as leading our city. So it's a good day. So unless there's any objection from any board members, I would like to make Saturday, September 30th, along with MTA, the free fare day throughout the entire WeGo public transit system in Davidson County. So I think we're all good with that. I don't think we need a motion for that, do we, Margaret? Or we do? Okay, let's just do a motion so we can have it
So
in paper.
can I make the motion?
You can
I'm
make
so
it.
excited about this
You so
too.
excited?
I am
I'm so excited too.
Second. I want to second it.
Oh, you got the rookie. You didn't get to do either. But
That's
you can,
right,
but
man.
you
You
can
gotta be
make a,
quick
but
on
you
the
can make a
draw.
comment if you like before we call for the vote.
They beat me to it, but I still like the idea.
All right. So it's a free fare day. This is exciting. So, any further comments? With no further comments, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
What an exciting time for all of us. Margaret, so glad to have you back. I think that we are lucky to have your good counsel with us all the time, so thank you. And glad to have you all back to work on all these great hubs that we're working on and all the property across the city. So I think having you all do this together and jointly and independent on your respective areas is great for MTA as well. Other than that, I think we'll see many of you on Saturday as we ride on the free transit day, MTA WeGo. If nothing further, then I will move on adjournment. We good? We are adjourned. Thank you all. Great job, everybody. Great job. What a meeting. All good stuff. All good stuff.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.